What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the TokenMinorities, and I am here with the Season 3 Week 3 battle of the Major Pokemon League. Let me explain. So, obviously, the NPL is my top priority. That's the league I've been with since Season 2, and NPL will continue. But relatively recently, I was invited to replace a coach in the MPL who, decided to step out mid-season, and I decided to go ahead and accept the invitation just because I do like the reputation of this league, and I think they have a lot going for them in terms of their content, in addition to the fact that it is a Wi-Fi only league, and that's something I have wanted to be a part of for quite some time, as while I'm trying to do more Wi-Fi battles for the NPL this season, it's still not primarily a Wi-Fi based league by any means. So for that reason alone, I thought joining the MPL would be a pretty fun thing to do, and just on top of that, they have a lot of really cool guys in the league that I've met through various activities on the channel and just through various connections in league play. So I'm pretty excited for this opportunity to join them for at least the rest of this season, and we'll just kind of see how I can do. But the unfortunate part is that I inherited a team that had an 0-2 record and was actually placed last, I believe, in its division. So we've got a bit of an uphill battle to climb here throughout this season to try to secure our spot in the playoffs. But let's just talk about the team a little bit that I inherited. The team is based around Rain, but it's not like an all-out Rain team either, so that's good. I definitely give props to the drafter of this team. His name is, or he goes by Poi. It's like Poiges or something like that on YouTube. You might be familiar with him. I was not familiar with him personally, but the team that he drafted was Scizor, Sylveon, Arcanine, Mega Swampert, Thundurus, Therian, Reuniclus, Armaldo, Serperior, Dugtrio, Miltank, and Politoed. So the team overall is okay. I think it has some holes that I intend to patch with free agency, and I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler now. Starting next season, I was allowed to have 2 free agency swaps upon entering the league, and in doing so, I swapped out Reuniclus for Sableye, mainly for priority Rain, but also just because I felt the team in general was pretty weak to setup sweepers, and just pretty passive overall, so I thought that it'd be good to have some priority burns to kind of help me along in that. And then the other swap that I'm doing is Arcanine for Salamence, and I know Arcanine is pretty good in the format, but whenever you have an Arcanine on your team, you want it to be able to use the full extent of its move pool, and considering it wants to run bulkier sets really over half the time, and it's going to rely on Morning Sun for those sets, that's neutered by Rain. So I think that's kind of counterproductive to have Arcanine on a Rain team despite the fact that Fire is such a great type in the format. So I decided to swap that out for Salamence, and we'll just kind of see how that goes. I am enjoying Salamence quite a bit on my NPL team, and I think it'll do pretty well on this team too, but I guess we'll see. But for this week, this is week 3, I am stuck with the team that was already drafted before I entered, and I have a pretty interesting matchup this week against a guy named Astroid. His content is very good. I highly recommend you check out his channel. I watched through his first 2 weeks of the MPL, and it's pretty high quality stuff, and I'll make sure to leave a link to his channel in the description below. Definitely check him out. But his team is the Chicago Chandelures, and he has Mew, Hydreigon, Volcarona, Mega Sableye, Cobalion, Talonflame, and Empoleon, Electros, Garchomp, and Lapras. So it seems like his team is pretty much centered around denying hazards and then trying to sweep with the likes of Talonflame and Volcarona, which I think is a little bit too one-dimensional of a strategy in my opinion, and that's something I'm definitely going to exploit in this matchup, in that whenever he has those 4 times weaknesses that are just alone really weak to Stealth Rock, then I can definitely take advantage of that by overpressuring the mons that would get rid of hazards or deter hazards, Mega Sableye, and also just having a lot of rock moves throughout my preparations. So that's kind of the general thought at team preview, but also just bigger threats on his team to mine. Mew is always a threat, to say the least, because it is so versatile and it can do so many things. Against my team, though, I feel like it's more stuck with the defensive role because it's probably his most reliable defogger against me, as he definitely could bring something like Empoleon as his defogger, but I have a lot of things that take advantage of Empoleon. Well, actually, Empoleon's okay, I think, as the defogger as well. Like, it's either going to be Empoleon or Mew. I really don't think he's going to try to bring Mega Sableye just because I have Sylveon. I have Thunder's T, which can set up on it if I'm bulky. Mega Swampert, even if I'm able to like put up a sub and deny the burn, they can put in a lot of work against Mega Sableye. And what's the other one? Superior also can set up on Mega Sableye with Leaf Storm. So Mega Sableye is not really too strong against me. I think his best offense against me is definitely the likes of Volcarona and Talonflame. So as long as I can keep those in check, I should be in pretty good shape this match. And I guess coupled with that, my opponent I don't think has too much experience in League play. He's clearly a skilled battler, I can tell just by watching a couple of his videos, but it's also pretty obvious to me that he's pretty new to League format, and he is. It's only going to be his third League match ever. But regardless, that's something that does have to be taken into account in my preparation, and with that in mind, I can make certain plays that I wouldn't be able to make against people who, you know, have more League format experience, just because I'm familiar with what those who are newer to the format are capable of, essentially. So that's about all there is to say here. Some of the bigger threats to him on my team include the Sylveon, because he really doesn't have anything that stops Sylveon, especially if I run Hidden Power Rock, which I will, and it's also just a great switch into his Hydreigon. And Thunder's Tea is also pretty good against him. The only real stop he has to that is Electros, and that's not a forever stop. That's just going to slow me down, as Electros has no recovery, so, or at least outside of like Drain Punch. Yeah, and then Superior is also pretty good, and I'll be jumping into that pretty soon here with the team builder, but yeah, Superior is a very, very good mon against his team just due to the fact that he doesn't have switch-ins. Like, his switch-ins could be things like Talonflame and Volcarona, but yeah, those don't appreciate Hidden Power Rock by any means, so Superior is looking pretty darn good as well, and I'm just going to go ahead and hop on over to the team builder so I can show you what I decided to bring against Astroid. Okay, and here we are with the team. And to start things off, kind of like I alluded to before, I started with Superior, as Superior really has no switch-ins on his team. He could try to switch in Talonflame and Volcarona, but they really won't appreciate it too much. And switching in Cobalion, I guess, is an option if it's a more defensive variant, but switching in Cobalion against this thing just risks it getting worn down considerably by 2 Leaf Storms, and, you know, Superior generally outspeeds Cobalion anyway, so it really doesn't make much sense to consider Cobalion to be a counter to Superior, especially when it can't OHKO with anything. But in terms of the moveset here, Hidden Power Rock, Leaf Storm, pretty standard here. Not standard, but pretty set for this match. Then I have Dragon Pulse to hit the Hydreigon as hard as possible. It's the only reason I'd ever use Dragon Pulse in this matchup, or to just get, you know, a more guaranteed KO due to the accuracy deficiencies of Leaf Storm. And then I have Synthesis as my last move. It really doesn't matter what I put here, but in the off chance that I need to recover some health with my Superior, Synthesis is there just to help me achieve that. I played with the idea of Leech Seed in that set, but I felt that I'd probably be clicking nothing other than Leaf Storm, Dragon Pulse, and Hidden Power Rock anyways, and just in case I happen to get worn down a lot by hazards or just in general from having to switch into Electros or something like that, Synthesis was a pretty okay move to have on this set. Now I have a Cope Berry to make this more of a lure to Talonflame, as Talonflame can put in a ton of work against my team, especially if it's a Swords Dance variant, and especially if I'm simply not prepared for it with my other mons. If it gets up a Swords Dance, it can do a lot of damage to my team. On top of that, a Choice Banded Talonflame can do a lot of damage to my team as well, and just due to the speed tiers of his team, he would have to bring Talonflame to outpace Superior, I believe, so it's pretty likely that he would try to use Talonflame to check this, and Cope Berry, Hidden Power Rock definitely will stop that right in his tracks. EV Spread here, I'm actually only speed creeping the Garchomp and not the Cobalion, and I guess we'll see if that ends up biting me in the butt in the actual battle, but I decided it was smarter to go ahead and have a little bit of extra bulk on this set, and you know, just to take the hits from Electros a little bit better, and to take the Brave Bird from Talonflame a little bit better as well, as this is a lure. It's going to most likely take the hit from Talonflame. That's what I wanted to do, but I still wanted to survive with as much health as possible to where I can actually beat the rest of his team with this thing, because with Talonflame and or Volcarona gone, this just goes crazy with Leaf Storm. He has no switch-ins, so this is probably the #1 win condition this game, just based upon that fact alone. And let's go ahead and hop on over to the next one, which is the Sylveon. So I have Sylveon on both of my teams. Hopefully that doesn't get too confusing, but I have different nicknames here. This one's Serenity, my other one is Reverberate, so that should keep them clear. And this, more or less, is just going to be a defensive pivot. It can switch and do a lot of things on his team very well. It's my dedicated counter to Mega Sableye if he decides to bring that. It's also a counter to most forms of Hydreigon. If he brings like Iron Tail on his Hydreigon, then okay, that'll do a lot of damage. It'll do like 60% if he's Life Orb mixed, and Flash Cannon would do about the same amount if it's Life Orb mixed. So if it carries a Steel move and hits me pretty hard, that's one thing, but it can't OHKO me, which is really nice. So that means I can OHKO it easily with a Hyper Voice on my end, and I really don't have to be too concerned about Resist Berries from Astroid at this point in his career, just because he doesn't have much experience. I didn't run a Resist Berry until like 6 or 7 games into my draft format career, so I really don't expect that he would do it at this point either. But with that in mind, I can really just run super effective attacks to cover everything and be okay, which is pretty nice in this matchup, considering I'm a little uncomfortable with the team at this point. But yeah, so Wish Protect just to stay alive and to pass wishes to my teammates, as overall this is going to be a more bulky team, and it's going to really appreciate that Wish support to keep it alive. And I did really want to run a Heal Bell on this just to, again, help with keeping my team unstatused, but I needed Hidden Power Rock to make sure that Talonflame could not set up in my face, as well as Volcarona, as if I don't have my Politoed, which I'll show here in a little bit, or my Arcanine is weakened, then Volcarona can probably do a lot of work to my team, so I need to make sure that everything on my team can deter Volcarona and Talonflame from getting out of hand. Next up is the Arcanine. This is my dedicated switch into Volcarona for sure. I know I don't have a super effective move for it, but Flare Blitz does a ton. Volcarona's base defense is not very good. It's like in the 60s, I believe. So it really does not appreciate a Flare Blitz, even coming off a 4 EV, minimum, essentially, attack Arcanine. So this is a pretty good switch into Volcarona. This also gives me a nice switch into Talonflame because of the Rocky Helmet. It will take a lot of damage there. This is also a nice switch into Electros, as when I have a Mega Swampert on my team, it's almost guaranteed to be bringing Grass Knot. I can switch this in on the Grass Knot and do a little bit of chip damage from the Rocky Helmet, because Grass Knot is still a contact move despite being especially offensive. So yeah, overall this is just a good pivot around a lot of his mons. Will-O-Wisp is just good in case he wants to try to switch in something like the Garchomp or the Hydreigon against me, as if I can get a Wisp on either of those, that'll definitely help in the wearing down process, as this team really does need the opponent to be whittled. That's kind of the goal with everything on his team. I need to whittle it to the point where things like my Thundurus and my Superior can try to clean up late game. It's kind of the game plan here. And Extreme Speed is just there to hit the Talonflame with, you know, +2 priority damage, just in case it does start to get out of hand a little bit. And yeah, that's all there is to say on that. Intimidate, just so I can take the physical hits a little better. Then we have the Politoed, and this set is actually a Water Absorb Politoed, so this gives me a very good switch into Lapras, and he has brought Lapras at least once, if not twice already this season, so he's definitely capable of bringing it. Plus, Lapras is a pretty good answer to Rain, just in its own right, so it would make a lot of sense for Lapras to come this week, and with this being such a heavily specially invested Politoed, I can switch on against Lapras any day and just Perish Song to scare it out. Obviously, I can't really hit Lapras with anything offensively, just because it has the Water Absorb ability, and Whirlpool can't really touch that. But even so, this gives me a switch into Lapras, so I can at least scout what move it's using if it's like a Choice Specs variant, and at the very least, it's going to also be a switch into something like Hydreigon, so that's pretty good too. It takes a little bit of pressure off of Sylveon. But the main reason for having this is to Perish Trap, and I can Perish Trap the likes of Empoleon, Mega Sableye, even Volcarona, potentially Cobalion if he's not like a Volt Switch variant, and just having that ability is really nice whenever his team is centered around trying to deter hazards, and if I can get rid of that deterrence, being Mega Sableye using this set, then that's pretty awesome. And it also takes pressure off of Sylveon again, so that Sylveon can do a little bit more in the matchup, as I know Sylveon can do a lot more than it looks like it can on paper. I've had a lot of experience with Sylveon, and it's probably one of my favorite Pokemon in the format, even though I've only had it for, you know, 1 week, 2 weeks technically in the NPL, and now 1 week here. I do really like it in the format. I think it has a lot of potential. It might be better than Clefable. Mark my words, it might be better than Clefable. I guess we'll find out, though, relatively soon throughout these seasons. But yeah, overall, this is just going to take hits from the special attackers and Perish Trap the guys I don't want to deal with, and then Rain Dance is there to set up the Mega Swampert sweep if need be. So, Mega Swampert, mainly offensive. I probably could have run a more bulky set with some HP investment, but I wanted to make sure I outsped a Scarfed Jolly Garchomp in the rain, and that's what I'm doing with the CB spread. So I did require Jolly with quite a bit of speed investment, but the coverage moves do allow me to pretty much hit everything on his team for a lot of damage. So that's a pretty good deal as well. Stealth Rocks, of course, are very good in the matchup just because he has the Fire Flying types, or Fire Flying, Fire Bug, whatever, as well as Lapras, which is weak to Stealth Rock. So yeah, that's overall the Swampert. It's also a very good late game win condition if I can get the rain up. And then finally, I have another win con potentially that is a bulky sub-nasty plot, Thunderous T. This can switch in almost freely against an Electros, which is really nice. The biggest risk with this is Rock Slide and Knockoff coming from the Electros, but if I can maybe get a burn on the Electros with my Arcanine, that'd be pretty awesome. That'd definitely help me hold on against that, and maybe get up a free sub against it as well and just set up in its face with nasty plots. That'd be pretty nice, as he really doesn't have much that outspeeds this either. I think the only thing he has that can outspeed this is Cobalion. And I mean, I can just set up on everything else pretty well. Cobalion can't OHKO me unless he's running Stone Edge, which is a pretty inaccurate move, so that's pretty nice as well. Man, just Thunderbolt HP Ice hits everything on his entire team. So I believe that's all there is to say about the team. Obviously, my team analysis a little bit more brief than usual, but I'm more concerned on the battle in this case because I'm pretty unfamiliar with the team in general, so it's going to be a lot of feeling out my opponent, feeling out how this team's supposed to run mid-battle, and I guess we'll just kind of see what happens on that. But I'm pretty excited for the match, and let's go ahead and hop on over to the battle and kick off my debut in the MPL. Alright, so looking at team preview, he brought a team that's actually kind of what I didn't expect. He didn't bring the Talonflame, which I thought was really his best way to deal with the likes of a Swift Swim Swampert. So just the fact that he didn't bring that's going to make things a little bit trickier, I think, because I think I might have over-prepped for Talonflame a bit. And yeah, so another thing that I noticed here at Team Preview is that he didn't bring Mega Sableye or Empoleon, which I thought were probably the two things that were easiest for my Politoed to Perish Trap. So with that in mind, Politoed's job has transformed into taking hits from Hydreigon, taking pressure off Sylveon, and potentially Perish Trapping the Volcarona to make sure Volcarona doesn't get out of hand, as I might have under-prepped for Volcarona a little bit, especially if he decides to run like a Light Orb Hidden Power Ground Volcarona, as at +1 that does a ton to Arcanine, so that's something I definitely have to keep in mind. But in my prep, just kind of like I mentioned earlier, I did take into account the fact that he's pretty new to the format. I don't really anticipate him running something as quote-unquote random as Hidden Power Ground on Volcarona at this stage in his career, so I think I'll be okay with Arcanine being my Volcarona answer, but time will tell, and I guess we'll kind of jump on in and find out. But in terms of the lead matchup here, I'm going to lead with my Mega Swampert just because it has a good matchup against the majority of his team, and I'm kind of expecting him to lead with something like Cobalion to set up his Stealth Rocks, or Mew to set up its Stealth Rocks. Either way, I have good switch-ins to both of them, I believe, and I should be in pretty good shape in terms of the lead matchup, but I definitely want to get up the Stealth Rocks as early as possible because they definitely pressure his team a lot. His only possible defogger is the Mew, so it's almost guaranteed that the Mew has defog. It's probably going to be a more support or bulky variant of Mew, making things like Nasty Plot Mew and Swords Dance Mew a little bit less of a threat, a little bit less of something to be concerned about, although still possible, and I want to scout out the Mew a little bit just to make sure I don't let it blow me back with something a little bit, crazy. But again, just due to my opponent's experience in the format, I'm not really expecting anything too ridiculous in terms of preps. So that's about all there is to say. Let's go ahead and hop on into the battle and see what happens. So like I said, I'm going to lead off with my Mega Swampert, and he's going to lead off with his Electros, and that's something I really didn't expect too much, to be honest. I mean, it makes sense that he's going to lead with something like this that's going to just Volt Switch to try to gain momentum, but fortunately for me, I have a really good combo here in the Arcanine with a Rocky Helmet and the Mega Swampert, so I'm going to basically lure him for going for the Grass Knot and go straight into my Arcanine, and that's going to be an easy, 1/6 of his HP gone due to the Rocky Helmet, so that's pretty awesome. I'm able to get a little bit of chip damage on this thing, and for something as bulky as Electros, this is very nice to have that chip damage, especially this early in the game. Now here, anticipated him going into anything that's not Volcarona, I'm just going to go straight for the Will-O-Wisp, as it's easily my best play, get a little residual damage on anything, and especially on something like Hydreigon that's most likely going to be a choice variant. It's just very nice to have that residual damage working on it, because then I can just switch into my walls and know that it's going to take damage every turn regardless of what I do. So now, I don't want to take too much damage on this thing. I want to make sure it's at as much health as possible, just in case he has a Hidden Power Ground Volcarona or Hidden Power Rock or anything like that. and I'm just going to swap into my Politoed, as this thing is probably the least useful thing on my team. I don't really care if I take a Specs Draco or something, and he decides to just go straight for the U-turn, which I thought was very risky because I just as easily could have just gone for the Morning Sun, as I know I can live a Specs Draco with especially defensive Arcanine. So a little bit of a risky play on his part, but it did work out for him. Now here he goes into his Lapras, and this was a matchup I really didn't want to see, as I can't really touch it offensively, and the best I can do is Perish Song, but I don't want to reveal that at this point because I want to hold that close to my chest just in case something becomes a little bit of a nuisance later on. So I am forced to switch into something to take potentially a Specs offensive attack, but fortunately it is just Toxic. So I guess at this point it would have been nice to have Heal Bell on the Sylveon, but even so, Hidden Power Rock is still really nice in the matchup, and I don't regret the decision to run Hidden Power Rock by any means just because of how big of a threat Talonflame was. But unfortunately, my Sylveon is now poisoned, and I'm going to have to deal with that. And he is going to switch out his Lapras into his Cobalion, which is a play I kind of disagree with, because now it's going to take a huge chunk from Hyper Voice, and that's going to essentially put it in range of a lot of stuff for my other Mons. So I think he probably should have left in Lapras, perhaps, or I don't know if that was his best play either. I don't think he should have let his Cobalion get so weakened, though, and I will definitely take that damage, though, for sure, as now I have essentially a free switch into my Mega Swampert, as he's pretty obviously going to go for Rocks or Iron Head here, and I think it's just pretty safe overall, as this will give me the opportunity to get my own Stealth Rocks up and get a little bit of momentum in that regard, because then he'll be really pressured to defog if he wants to keep his Volcarona from losing half of its health and keep his Lapras from losing a quarter of its health every time it comes in. So putting pressure on the Mew is what I'm going for here, and that's definitely something that's going to aid me throughout this match. So I'm just going to go ahead and Mega Evolve and go for those Stealth Rocks as he goes into his Electros, which I thought was, I mean, it's a good play. He's probably expecting me to go for Earthquake, so that's a good play overall, especially when he has the Grass Knot to threaten me out immediately. But I'm just going to go for my Stealth Rocks to get that residual damage going on the switch-ins, and I'm just going to switch right into my Arcanine again because I really have no reason not to. If he wants to predict me and go for the Volt Switch, good on him. He's probably going to Volt Switch into his Mew, or sorry, going to my my Thunder's T first, expecting the Volt Switch. That's what happened, and he just goes with the Grass Knot, which is just fine. As well as now, I still need to find out what kind of moveset this thing has. This thing has a ridiculous coverage for sure, so I'm just going to go straight for the Substitute. And if he has Knockoff, it'll still break my sub. If he has Rock Slide, it'll still break my sub, but it's not the end of the world. I just need to see if he has anything to hit me. And he turns out to have Rock Slide, so that's fine. I just lose a little bit of health from my Substitute. Really was just a Hail Mary play anyways. He easily could have switched out into something else, but it's pretty obvious that he was going to stay in. Really no harm done. Maybe not the best play I could have made in the world. I probably could have gone straight into Arcanine to get more Rocky Helmet damage, but I really did think he would just go straight for the Volt Switch, and I don't really want the Arcanine to take Rock Slide damage either. So knowing that he's probably going to go straight for the Rock Slide again, and knowing my Serperior has a little bit of extra bulk than it normally would, I'm going to go straight into Serp, and I'm going to eat up that Rock Slide like it's nothing. I did, what, 30 or 40? Like 40, or 30, yeah, 30 HP, and you know, that's nothing. So now I can just go straight for the Leaf Storm, as he has really no switch-ins, as his only real switch-in would be Volcarona, and Stealth Rocks are up for 1, but for 2 I have Hidden Power Rocks, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I just go straight for the Leaf Storm, and it does a very good chunk to the Mew, but it doesn't quite look like I'm going to be able to get a 2-hit KO with the second one, although I know he's pressured to defog because of the Volcarona, so I'm just going to go straight for the second Leaf Storm, and it just barely misses out on the KO. I don't know if that was a roll. It could have been a roll. I'm not really sure without knowing his investment, but he does manage to survive. He defogs, and he actually raises my evasiveness. So that's actually pretty cool too, and something that I definitely could try to take advantage of if I felt I was lucky, but I know I'm not. So I'm just going to take out the Mew with the Serperior, and we are off to a nice 6-5 advantage. We get our first kill of our MPL career with Serperior, which is pretty cool. And now he's going to go into his Cobalion, which is the play that I thought was kind of interesting, because if I was speed creeping this with the Serperior, I definitely could have taken it out with a Leaf Storm there at +4, so that's a little bit surprising, but he scared me out. He must have known, I don't know. But I just go straight into my Swampert, just in case, of course, he was a Choice Scarf variant, and he turns out to not be Choice Scarf, so I really don't understand the play of going Cobalion against Serp, but I guess he felt that was his best play, so that's fine. It worked out for him pretty well due to my investment, but I'm actually going to lose my Mega Swampert here to close combat, so that's kind of my bad for not having a little bit more bulk investment on this thing. I definitely should have considered Cobalion switch-ins a little bit more whenever building this team, but I will lose my Mega Swampert here, so that's kind of bad. I don't really have great switch-ins to the Cobalion anymore, so I need to kind of get a little more aggressive on this, and in doing so, I'm going to go straight into my Arcanine. intimidate it. And here I expected him to switch out into his Hydreigon. It's already burned, and it's proven to be a good switch into the Arcanine. What I didn't consider at the time was the Arcanine also has access to close combat. It was very possible that I'd go for close combat on that turn, and with that said, he might not go into his Hydreigon for that reason. But I go into Sylveon, thinking he'll go Hydreigon. Unfortunately, that doesn't quite work out for me, but I don't really lose much either, except a little bit of health on the Sylveon. So not a horrible situation here, but, you know, Sylveon's a little bit weaker now. But now after the Intimidate, I know for a fact I can survive an Iron Head from this thing, and as long as I don't get flinched, I should be able to take this thing out. And it's a really big threat at this point, especially considering the somewhat misprep in underspeed creeping the EVing myself so I'm slower than the Cobalion with Superior, but I do manage to not get flinched, and I'm able to take out the Cobalion with a Hyper Voice, so that's pretty nice as well. Sylveon picks up a KO here in this matchup. But unfortunately, I'm left a little bit weaker than I would like to be, to the point where I really can't freely switch in on something like the Hydreigon. I can only really check it if he goes for a Draco Meteor or a Dark Pulse. So that's something that's a little bit complicated. He tries to take this opportunity to set up with his Volcarona, which actually is a play that's very, very good on his end, as if he was going to set up Volcarona, this would be his opportunity, but I'm going to go straight into my Politoed here. As he goes for the Quiver Dance, as expected, I am expecting this to have Giga Drain as well, and if he does, that's cool. But given my investment, it's I believe it's a chance to 2-hit KO, a pretty good chance to 2-hit KO this Politoed if he's not Life Orb, and if he is Life Orb, then, you know, guaranteed 2-hit KO. But I'm just going to go straight for the Perish Song on this turn, because I don't really want this thing to get out of hand. I have Protect on this. I can make sure I don't lose too many Pokemon to this, especially whenever I have the Arcanine at, you know, a pretty high amount of health still. There's really no way this Volcarona can go absolutely nuts at this stage in the battle, as long as I have the Perish Song ticking down on it. And as long as I have this Whirlpool here. And he goes for another Quiver Dance, which that's a play I disagree with. I think he should have started attacking me immediately right there, but I can understand if he didn't expect to see Whirlpool. But whenever you see a Politoed that doesn't have Drizzle in this format, it's almost always going to be a Trapper Politoed, because there's really no reason to not run, I shouldn't say that, but there's very few reasons to run anything but Drizzle on a Politoed. But yeah, so I'm just going to go for the Protect on this turn as it goes for Giga Drain. Now we're both going to Feint on this next turn, so it's pretty obvious that we're both going to switch out. On this, he decides to go ahead and swap on out into his Eel, which is fine. It's a good pivot against my team overall, so I'm just going to swap the old Politoed out and go straight into my Warm Front, the Arcanine. And this is a pretty good matchup for me. Again, it gives me another opportunity to go for a Wisp if I so choose, or I can just go for damage on this thing, which is actually what I decided to do, knowing that he'll try to stay in, probably Volt Switch, to try to get something better out against this, and I'm going to do a chunk to this thing, which is really nice. Looks like over 50%, and I get the burn. The burn was actually really big, and we'll see this later on, as this actually makes up for the fact that I missed the Whirlpool on a previous turn, as if I hit the Whirlpool earlier, the Volcarona was gone, but unfortunately I missed the Whirlpool, and this hack's definitely counteracted that Whirlpool miss here, and I'll explain more in a little bit. But yeah, he decides to go into his Lapras. I'm pretty confident it's not going to be a Choice Specs Lapras with Toxic, so I go ahead and Morning Sun up just to see what he wants to go for, maybe get a gauge of his EV spread. And it turns out, based upon that damage, he's probably more defensive. He's got a lot of... He doesn't have very much special attack investment, to say the least. Like, that did about 50%, and Surf with modest max special attack would do a little bit more than that, most certainly. So I think it's a more bulky Lapras, which makes sense given the Toxic that he revealed earlier. But I am going to stack up my Arcanine here to the Lapras, which could have been considered a misplay, just due to the fact that he still had Volcarona around, but I didn't think I had anything else that was more expendable than Arcanine at this point, especially when I still have Politoed at essentially full health and just available to check the Volcarona and make sure it doesn't get out of hand. And I just really wanted to free switch into something that could do a lot of damage to the Lapras. Plus, with the Electros being burned, this thing is set up fodder for my Thundurus, as unless he has a ton of investment in attack, he cannot break my sub with Rock Slide when he's burned. And that's why the burn hacks was such a big deal here, as this scenario is going to give me the opportunity to go straight for the substitute against the Electros, and it will be free. As I'll get up the sub, Electros will try to go for the Rock Slide, and as you can see here soon, it will not break my sub. And for that, you know, I apologize. I never like hacks in anybody, but I did miss the whirlpool, so I'm going to call it even on that one for sure. So the Electros will go down to burn, and I'm going to be stuck behind a substitute still, which is nice. Probably like a 1% substitute left at this point, but it's still a substitute, and it means that he's going to be forced to switch into something to take a big hit from this Thunderous, which is really nice. Here, I think he probably should have gone Volcarona and tried to go for game, but he decides to go into his High Dragon, which is fine. I just go for the Hidden Power Ice, revealing that I actually outspeed this. So this is the turning point of the match, in that because I outspeed this, I know that Superior also outspeeds this because this is obviously not Choice Scarf. So what I need to do to win the match is fodder off Sylveon to this, and then go for a Leaf Storm against the High Dragon, and at that point I'll be at +2 with enough oomph to take out the Volcarona and to take out the Lapras. So that is the game plan. That's how I plan to win this game. Sack off Sylveon, win the Superior. So I'm going to switch out the Thunderous Tea and go straight into my Sylveon. And with this, I kind of was hoping to feint here just so that there wouldn't be the risk of him catching on to my strategy, but unfortunately that doesn't quite happen here. You know, the one time I'm actually hoping for a critical hit or like a really high roll Dark Pulse, it doesn't quite work out in my favor, unfortunately. Sylveon is able to hang on, but I'm just going to click Hidden Power Rock here just in case he decides to go into his Volcarona, as I really want this to stay alive. Like, I would love for this to stay alive. But obviously if he attacks, I'm going to go down, so it's no big deal. So I just go for the Hidden Power Rock, and I'm not able to get it off because he takes me out with the Dark Pulse. But this gives me free reign to go ahead and go into my Superior, which is exactly what I'll do after all the residual damage takes place. Wi-Fi is much slower than Showdown, let me tell you. But I just go straight into my Superior, and I click Leaf Storm. So as long as I hit this Leaf Storm, I should be in good shape to win the game. That's also assuming I hit Leaf Storm against the Lapras. So down goes the High Dragon as I do connect the Leaf Storm, and now he's he's left with the opportunity to either go into his Volcarona or his Lapras. And he makes the, in my opinion, correct play and goes into his Volcarona here. And at this point I was kind of worried he could be a Charty Berry set, but due to his experience level in the format, I was pretty confident he would not be. And fortunately for me, he was not, and I am able to take out the Volcarona with a Hidden Power Rock. Even if he was a Charty Berry, though, I think I could have gone into Politoed and Perish Songed that down and then beaten the Lapras with the Thunderous Tea. I think I would have been okay regardless, especially if the Lapras isn't Wakan Berry, but I'm not sure of its item because I don't think I ever saw leftovers. But regardless, down goes the Lapras as well, and we do pick up the 3-0 victory. Superior coming in with 4 big kills, but that was actually a very, very good game, especially coming against a player that has such limited experience in the format. It was a good match, and I did enjoy using this team quite a bit, I must admit. A more rain-oriented team is something I've never really tried before in the format, or really even in OU, so it was definitely pretty fun to have the opportunity to play with the likes of Mega Swampert and Politoed, and in future weeks I'll be sure to actually exploit the full potential of Rain by using Drizzle as the ability in Politoed and stuff like that. But that's the game. Great game, Astroid, and definitely check out his channel. Like I said before, it will be in the description below. But that about wraps this up. So next week we have a fun match against Moxie and the what's his team, the Baltimore Braviaries. And the funny thing about that is I actually played Moxie in pool play for the March Madness tournament, and I lost. So that is something that I need to avenge, kind of like I just avenged my loss to Trev in the championship last week in my MPL Week 1 battle. It's time to get revenge on Moxie as well, and let's see if I can go 2 for 2 on that. But thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about the addition of this MPL content to the channel. I'm definitely interested in hearing what you think on that, as your opinion really will go into my decision of whether or not I want to continue with the MPL in future seasons. But obviously the NPL was here for a very long time, the foreseeable future, but MPL is something I'm interested in. If you can distinguish the M's from the N's. I'm not really sure if you can. Let me know if you can't distinguish that either, and I'll find some other way to deal with that. But thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next week. Peace.